What's going on, everybody? It is the Willie Ashford from the Black Culture Podcast. I know you're ready to get into this interview, but before you do,
make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple, Google, and Spotify at the Black Culture Podcast. And
also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast. Peace.
Let's dig into your career because I think that's a good place to start. It's funny,
Okay.
I was at a lunch with a friend earlier today and he had on a sweatshirt and it said FCA. And I kept looking at it, like, man, where have I seen that before? And then I asked him, I said, what does that FCA mean? He said, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I said, dude, we're gonna interview tonight. That's where you work for. And so
that's what's up.
So how did you get into that? Like, give us the backstory of how you got into your career where you are now.
For sure. So really, man, and this is what I tell everybody. FCA is a career that was pursuing me before I even knew that FCA existed. So just to provide context, I grew up as a preacher's kid. And let me just start by saying, man, every stereotype associated with a preacher's kid that, you guys have either heard or those that are listening have heard, they are absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Absolutely true.
Let me be the first to raise both my hands. Let me raise both my hands, man. Every stereotype you heard is exactly true. And so growing up, like I said, I grew up in church, but I also was involved in sports as well. Played basketball, football, baseball, did it all. And so when it came time for me to leave home for the first time and go away to school, which I went to Bowling Green State University, was BG Falcon for about 2 years. And that was the first time I was away on my own. And I really had to experience what a relationship with God looked like apart from being driven to church by my parents, so to speak. I really had to explore my faith by myself. And I'm gonna be honest, I went out there and I was wilding. Like, I didn't have the discipline to handle life on my own and, to know the balance between kicking it and still, being grounded and, all that type of stuff. And so, I wound up losing my scholarship, had to come back home, which that was a whole journey and experience. But it was through that process, which I'm grateful for, that it really reaffirmed my commitment to God, so to speak. And so, through God just orchestrating things in my life, I wound up going to this church that I just kind of felt led to go to. And when I got there, I remember there was this woman, I was getting ready to serve in youth ministry, be the youth pastor of this church. And this woman hands me this Bible, and I'll never forget it. It was this purple metallic Bible, and it had like silver and black, like holographics on the front. And I was like, yo, like, what is this? And she was like, I think you should dig into this. This will be a great tool for you to use with the young men in youth ministry. And on the Bible, it said FCA. Now, I had heard of FCA back in college, but, I didn't really kind of know what it was. I didn't do a deep dive. I looked at the Bible. She showed me. I thought it was dope because it was a Bible, but then it also had devotions that spoke to athletes. So that's 2012. Fast forward to 2015, one of my good friends used to play in the NFL. He had retired, walked away, just felt like it was time to do something different. He tells me, he was like, hey, bro, I'm getting ready to take this position with this organization called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so here it is again, 3 years later from me getting that Bible. I'm like, yo, okay, I keep hearing about FCA. There must be something to this. So I learned more about the organization and, see it's just a really great opportunity to combine both of my passions, God and athletics. And so he winds up taking the position and, I tell him, hey, if there's an opportunity for me to get involved, please let me know. And so let's fast forward again, about 2 years later, this is 2017. I get a phone call and he's like, hey man, a position just opened up, as the chaplain for the University of Akron football team, through FCA. And so I'm excited because I'm like, okay, I played football, I played in the MAC conference, this is Akron, we used to beat up on Akron all the time. Like, let me just admit that right now, like Akron did not stand a chance against BG or anybody else in the MAC for that matter. But, I knew the coach that was going in there, legendary coach, Terry Bowden. The Bowden family, like, it's synonymous with Auburn, big time college football programs. And he was looking for a young guy to come in, connect with his players, travel with the team, and it was all through FCA. And so I remember, I'm like, Lord, if this is the right door and the right opportunity for me, like open that door. The door doesn't get open. And so here I am thinking like, man, like that, like I thought that was going to be a perfect fit. It's exactly what I love to do. I felt called to it. But I felt like God was kind of testing me like in that moment, to see would my heart, become jaded, or would I really trust that he has something better for me? So that door
now
opens.
let me ask, what were you doing this whole time where you were kind of waiting for this door to open?
Got you. So I was in business for myself. I started a business called Elavate Marketing in 2012. So I was doing freelance marketing. I was doing logo design, web design, graphics, all that type of stuff, promotions, you name it, anything in the marketing world we were doing. But I felt like, a calling for ministry more so on a full-time scale, and being involved in the sports world, was where I wanted to be. And so I remember, man, I would just come home every day, and I would just, speak in faith, like, God, you're going to open up a door for me to go, and do full-time sports ministry. Like that's literally for a year and a half, that was my prayer. And so I get that one opportunity with Akron doesn't come through. And so I remember getting a phone call probably about an hour after I found out I didn't get the position. My guy that took the position back in 2015 calls me and he says, hey, man, there's a guy that we were interviewing for this role in Cleveland that turned it down because he felt like he was supposed to turn it down for somebody else to get the job. So it's crazy.
Whoa. Yeah. Wait a minute. This dude turned down a position for somebody else that he probably didn't know, but he just felt in his spirit that somebody else was supposed to get the job.
If there's anybody out there that ever doubt that there was a God, I don't see how you can after this story.
Bro,
yeah, facts.
I hope that there's somebody out there that hits the lotto, but they turn it down because they know that I'm supposed to get that. You know what I'm saying? Let this be a lesson to y'all out there. I'm joking.
Hey, man, if it transfers, it is what it is. But literally, man, the guy said he felt like he was supposed to turn down the position because he felt like it belonged to somebody else. And so literally, man, one door closes, and then an hour later, the right door that God had for me, opened up. And, I've been serving in FCA now on staff for 3 years. This July, I came in as an area representative. And so I was working more so in our inner city and urban schools on the east side of Cleveland. But as of April of this year, I got promoted to area director for Cuyahoga County. And so now I have the position to kind of oversee the majority of our schools in Cuyahoga County, working directly with coaches and athletes, discipling them, through the word of God, helping to establish what we call huddles, which are basically groups that meet, on school campuses to go through the word together, to pray together. We do camps, we do clinics throughout the summer, throughout the entire year. And, we have a couple initiatives going on in the community, one namely being Full Court Faith with the Cleveland Cavaliers, which has really grown over this past year, even in the midst of COVID, to us launching the Inner City Youth Basketball League between the Cavs, YMCA, and FCA. And so I'm blessed. I get to wake up every day and do what I love. So I feel like I don't work, and it's all purpose driven. So that's a little bit about, how I came into FCA, and a little bit about what, the ministry is doing here in Cleveland.
So let's dig into your backstory, because we already know you was a PK and all of the all of the stereotypes that go along with it. So yeah, you grew up as a preacher's kid. Your father's a pastor?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And so growing up in that environment, and it's really interesting that you in ministry, but not just in church. Most of the time you're expected to, be like pretty much for the most part, take over the church at some point, but you decided to kind of do outreach ministry, right? So what was it like growing up in that environment, coming up for you, and then ultimately coming to make the decision to get back into ministry?
Yeah, great question, man. So as I stated, I have two younger sisters, and we have stories upon stories. of what it was like for us to grow up in church, when during that time, a lot of our friends and our peers, teammates, what have you, they were going to church, but they weren't necessarily living for God, and that's definitely a unique distinction, right? Because here we are, 10, 11, 12 years of age, we're doing the vacation Bible schools, we're doing the Sunday schools, we're having an understanding of what our identity in Christ, looks like, and how we're supposed to live as Christians. And I'm gonna be honest, man, I grew up and I had a very strict father, like we weren't even allowed to go to the movies. Like that's how strict. But a lot of that stemmed from how he grew up. That old school.
Grew up like I grew
up. Willie.
Yeah,
bro.
You can relate.
Listen, I wasn't allowed to listen to Kirk Franklin when Kirk Franklin first came out with Stomp and all of that, like the rap style church. No, sir.
Wow. So you was probably listening to like the Mighty Clouds of Joy, Hezekiah Walker, John
the Canton Spirituals, all of that. Yes, sir.
Yo, oh my God. Like the flashback I just had of those album covers, bro, and them long suits,
yes,
and that
sir.
wavy hair.
Listen, man, I even caught the keynotes.
Oh yeah, fact.
I mean, hey, look,
so
at least were you allowed to listen to Fred?
I can listen to Fred,
Absolutely.
but listen, Hezekiah was kind of where it stopped, because Hezekiah kind of got in the little uppity too. So
he was kind of
like going left.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, well, I can't, I can relate to Willie in some aspects, but not that one. Like Kirk was a constant in our crib, man. Saturday mornings cleaning the house, nothing but Stump, Do You Want a Revolution? Like the whole nine is going, it's blaring through the house.
So you was that cousin I was sneaking listening to it with.
Yeah, facts, absolutely. But I was also the cousin that, we in the room, we got Z1079 at a volume of like 2 or 3. We listening to Usher My Way. Like
facts.
Rebellious.
Hey man, this is the thing about it, right? So, when you're kind of closed off from certain things and you're being told, well, that's not good, by nature,
naturally,
curiosity
you want to see what it's about. Yeah,
you want to see what's up, man. And so, my sisters and I, we kind of had, that experience. Me, I believe more so than them, because I just wanted to know, like, all right, well, what's life outside, of church look like? But you know what? I'm grateful for the way that we grew up, because, it's true to what the scripture talks about, man. You train up a child in the way they should go, so when they're old, they don't depart from it. And if it wasn't for, those strong Christian values and that strong spiritual foundation being planted, I don't know how I would have responded, when I went to school, was out on my own for the first time and life actually hit. And I don't know how I would have responded if it wasn't for, all those seeds that they had planted. And so for me, ministry is something, like I was sharing earlier, that I've never been able to escape. Even when I went off to school and I tried to be somebody that I wasn't, the guys that I went to school with, they'd be quick to call me on, certain things. Like, Nobles, why you talking like that, man? Nobles, why you got that drink in your hand? Nobles, why you coming to the club with us? Like, they already knew, because I was fighting so hard against an identity I didn't want to be associated with, simply because I felt alone. Like, I felt like there was nobody my age that, could relate to the experiences that I had, because all us PKs was trying to do the same thing. Like, we was all running, from how we grew up, just so we could see what, the other side of life, so to speak, was like, only to come back, and realize, okay, you know what? Like, this God thing, like, is not bad. It's just understanding, we can still live, but we also have an understanding, like, there's more life in Christ. There's an abundance that comes from living in him. And once I figured that out, man, it made ministry not feel laborious or made it feel tedious. I actually was able to enjoy it because I understood life in a greater sense, so to speak.
So I want to jump in right there, because you grew up the way I was. Like, I wasn't a PK, but I lived with my aunt. She took care of me and my mom, and she was an evangelist. My uncles was elders. So it was like, and I think when you that young, you really don't understand it, because if you go to school and you see other kids.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Price with the Black Culture Podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our channel. We're on YouTube, Apple, Google, and Spotify, where we talk about everything about the Black culture. And
follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast.
Peace.
Right. So it's like you want to do those things, and like now we need more people like you, like in the church to help us.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree, man, because like you said, man, my family was the same way. You know, just to provide background, my grandparents were my pastors initially. My dad was the co-pastor. My aunt was assistant pastor. My other aunt was the minister of music. My mom was the head of finance and on youth ministry. And, you know, when you grow up in church, especially family church, like you're literally serving in every aspect of ministry.
You're doing
like,
everything, bro.
You're doing everything. Like you're learning serving like at a very young age. Like, you know, setting up tables and chairs, you know, cleaning bathrooms. Like that's not something that like in your mind, oh, this is just what church looks like, or this is what ministry looks like, which I'm grateful for because, you know, it really instilled what servanthood, you know, or servant leadership, I should say. That's the term we often refer to in FCA, you know, really modeling what Christ did, because what Christ modeled before the disciples and really before the world was servant leadership. He talked about it, you know, the greatest of these is the least of these, so on and so forth. He didn't come to be served, you know, but that he could serve, right? And so that's the mindset, you know, and the principles that were instilled in us. But like you were saying, Willie, I think it's good to have a healthy balance, especially to show this young generation, because Willie, I'm sure you'll agree, what brought you and I to church is not what's bringing this generation to church. Matter of fact, a lot of them not even going to church simply because, you know, it's not being instilled in the homes. Like, you know, I grew up in the era where if you live under my house, under my roof, like you going to church. Now, granted, it was different. We actually wanted to go. We just didn't want to go all the time. Like that was the key.
And we was there all the time.
Oh, bro, like Sunday 9 a.m. service, 11 a.m. You go to dinner and come back for 5 a.m. Sunday night fire.
Wednesday,
I'm like, man, this
Bible study, Friday night, joy night.
You understand, bro?
Yes,
absolutely.
Man, I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, the thing about it, man, is it, you know, church should not feel like religious. You know, it should feel organic, right? And I think that's, you know, where you were saying we need more people like us that have lived through it to minister and help this next generation to see, hey, listen, it's not about being in church 5-6 days out the week. It's just about being able to have an organic relationship where you understand, okay, you know, God is a lifeline. Like in him, I breathe, I move, I live, I have my being. But that doesn't mean that I have to, you know, be in a physical building, you know, umpteen days out the week, you know, to be connected to him. That's just a place where we come together, you know, with other believers, we fellowship, you know, we hear testimonies, you know, we're able to see, you know, our brother or our sister that was going through something and how God brought them out. Like church should really be a place where we come just to celebrate what God is doing in the lives of everybody else, you know, or be able to know how I'm supposed to pray for my brother, how I'm supposed to pray for my sister, not somewhere where I feel like, okay, I just left a 9 to 5 and now I'm going to another 9 to 5. Because how many people, and Willie, I'm sure you saw this, how many people did you see literally die in church because they thought being there all the time and doing stuff was what God wanted? And that's never what he intended, man. He said, I came to give you life and that more abundantly, you know? And so I just believe, man, we have to help this next generation understand a different perspective than what you and I had. But it's kind of good that we got that perspective so we can let them know, hey, it's just all about finding balance.
Definitely, man. And like you said, like when you're younger, it's like what worked back then absolutely is not going to work now. So
right,
you need like people like you need younger people to younger people reach younger people. Even back then, like it was out of respect when we was younger that we didn't like really talk back. We didn't really get them. It's just that we respected them. But now like having like a youth and to you, like they can more relate to you because you're more not in their bracket, but you understand because you know, I've been there. I know what you're feeling. I know your parents are strict, but when you get older, it'll all make sense. But I want to ask you something, man, because sports is a huge part of our community. How do you feel about like the status of kids sports now?
So being in the industry, right, and seeing these things on a day-to-day basis, I think that sports is the greatest platform we have as society to influence, right? But I had a conversation with a guy that runs this rec center that they're doing a phenomenal job at the rec center that they have. But one of the things that I talked to him about is that the one drawback that I feel sports has is that we only drive, our children, or we only hear our kids saying, man, I want to be like LeBron, or I want to do what I see Steph Curry doing, or I want to go out there and win championships like Tom Brady, when they fail to realize you can have just as much success as being like a Stephen A. Smith, being like a Chris Broussard. Like I guarantee a lot of kids don't even know that a Black man, Stephen A. Smith, is one of the highest paid employees at ESPN. Like just got the bag thrown at him, and has show. If you look, you cannot go on ESPN and not see something with Stephen A. Smith's name on it. Like, dude, literally, yeah, he's like Stephen A. The brand of Stephen A. Smith is synonymous with that 4-letter network.
Oh,
and so
absolutely.
I think that, yeah, and so I believe that what we have to do, and this is something that I'm working on, is helping our kids see, look, less than 1% of the world is going to make it to become a professional athlete. Those are just the stats. I tell our kids all the time, that play NFL, that have aspirations for NFL, not to deter them, but give them the reality. NFL stands for not for long. Like, so even if you make it, the average NFL career is only 3 years. Like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life once you get out? And only less than 1%, again, of the population are going to make it to become a professional athlete. But there's a lot of
let me
jobs.
correct you. Not even less than 1% of the population, less than 1% of college athletes.
Exactly. Yep.
Even go. So that's way, way, way less.
Exactly. And that's what I meant. So appreciate you clarifying that for me, bro. Less than 1% of college athletes. You think of all the colleges that are out there, less than 1% of those athletes are going to play at any type of professional level once they leave. But there's a lot of jobs in sports broadcasting. There's a lot of jobs in sports marketing. There's a lot of jobs in front office, sports training, all those types of things. And so I think that what we have to do, because kids are attracted to sports, is use that platform to influence, but also expose them to the other opportunities that lie just besides what you can do with a basketball or a football. I believe when we talked, I don't know, maybe a month ago, I shared with you guys, I heard this athlete, Fred Taylor, played for the Jacksonville Jaguars back in the day. I watched the show I Am Athlete on YouTube. Like, dope show. Him, Brandon Marshall,
super dope.
Ocho Cinco.
One of our favorites. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. Like, that's top 3 in my book right now. And Fred Taylor says all the time, exposure leads to expansion. And so I just believe, like, if we're able to put the Chris Broussards, the Stephen A. Smiths, like, get them in front of our young kids and have them hear their stories, what it took for them to get to where they are, yes, still pursue what you want to do, but also understand there's another route to get to where you want to get to. I'll share this story real quick. One of my good friends, man, he worked for the Atlanta Hawks and he moved up here to Cleveland. And so he's involved with the Cavs, running their youth sports department. And he's been helping us and very instrumental in helping us to get this youth basketball league off the ground. We recently interviewed him on a podcast that we do for FCA called Faith Out Front, which I'm going to just, give a shameless plug. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, go subscribe, go go tap in with the podcast. But we asked them, how can young athletes, really identify their purpose outside of sports? And he shared a really powerful testimony, man. Growing up playing basketball, he was able to play, I think, at the D3 or D2 level. And his only dream was to make it to the NBA, just make it to the NBA. Like, every practice he went to, every game he played, his mindset was, I got to make it to the NBA. Now, he made it to the NBA. It just wasn't the route or the position he thought he would have. And so I just share that to say, man, if we can expose our kids to all the possibilities that exist within the world of sports, I think they can leverage that platform even greater. Man, with social media right now, man, you could become a sports photographer. You can become a sports reporter. If you see that, hey, the highest I may go is high school basketball, high school football. Learn what opportunities exist where you are and leverage those things to help position you for where you want to be. if sports is, you know, your career choice. So that's my feelings on the world of sports. Well, one of them at least. We just have to expose them to what's possible outside of, you know, just being on the field or on the court.
Man, I'm glad you said that, because let's be honest. The main reason why, especially our kids, want to go become pro athletes is for the money, right?
They want the
But
bag.
yeah, of course. But one of the things me and Willie talked about, I said, you know, when they get that bag, what's one of the first things they're going to go do? Buy their mama house,
Yep.
buy European car,
Yep.
get the clothes, get the
Designer
jewelry.
clothes. Yeah.
Now,
Buy the bar out.
go buy out the bar, hang out with their
Yeah.
friends, this and that. Now, but who do you
Right.
think is on the receiving end of those transactions? And so the
Exactly.
thinking
Yeah.
is, you can become a luxury real estate agent. You can become a luxury car salesman. You can become
Yep.
you can become the connector guy. Look, in Cleveland, and I'm not sure if it's still like this, but there was like one realtor that all the ball players, when they got signed and they came here, or if they got traded or whatnot, she was the one who set them up with their condo or their house, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with the cars. There's a guy, I'm not gonna say his name, but he was the one who was handling a lot of those transactions. The jewelry, the clothes, like everything. When they get that bag, they're not, most of them aren't trying to save their money. They want to spend it because look, I
Right.
want all these things that I never had before. And look, to them, it's just check,
Yeah.
swipe, whatever. And so it's like those opportunities are there in more abundance than just sports doctors. 9 times out of 10, it's guaranteed they're gonna get hurt. How
Yep.
about one of us be there, right? But
Right.
you said something earlier, especially when it comes to youth, that I just want to circle back to, and that's this: the verse in the Bible, train the child up in the way they should go, and they're old, they won't depart from it. And so I feel like a lot of us are being trained wrong, because regardless if your training is good or bad, when you're old, you won't depart from it, right? So I
Right.
wanted to ask you about that training, right? Because you grew up with good principles, values, morals, but that process of you getting to that stage where you could finally realize it and let it set in and be able to use some of those principles, I wanted you to kind of dig into that a little bit more, because a lot of people don't understand. You can put all these values into your kids, but they still got to go through their own process of learning and absorbing and being able to use that for when they get older.
Absolutely. You know, because I'm no different. Just because I grew up in church, you know, I didn't have to necessarily turn out the way that I did, you know, because I've seen, you know, some of my guys that I grew up with that did grow up in church, and, you know, life for them went an entirely different direction. But, you know, I think it just comes down to moral responsibility. And what I mean by that is, you know, understanding, okay, one, I'm here for a purpose. Like that's the one thing that every athlete I'm in front of, you know, that's one of the first things I lead with, whether I'm speaking to them one-on-one, whether I'm speaking to a team, you know, I let them know, hey, listen, you know, you're here, and it's not just because of what you can do with the ball in your hands. Like there's a specific reason that you were placed on this earth, and you have to find, like, what is that purpose? What is the reason that you're living? Because a lot of our youth out here, man, they're just existing, but they're not living. You know, a lot of their identity is tied up in, you know, who's validating them on social media. You know, how many girls are they sleeping with, or, you know, how many guys, you know, is trying to get at them, whatever the case may be. And I think a main reason is because they're void of purpose, or they don't understand fully what their purpose is. And so that's why, you know, I'm a strong advocate for obviously FCA, but other programs that are similar that, you know, are able to meet the kids where they are. You know, I have a ton of respect for programs that go into the schools and really meet these kids where they are, to show them, like, there's more for you. There's once again, going back to that exposure leading to expansion. There's a program right now that I know for a fact is in about at least 6 or 7 of our public schools throughout different suburbs of Cleveland, Warrensville, Maple, Garfield, just to name a few. And what they do, it's like a leadership program. They take their kids on trips, you know, to show them, okay, this is how, you know, you deal in the political realm. This is how you deal in the financial realm. And they show them different things that are possible. And so I think that the more we're able to expose our children to, it gives them a more responsibility to, one, understand, okay, yes, there were things instilled in me. And even if I fall away from those things, which is going to happen, stumbling blocks, obstacles in the road, none of us can escape them, right? But if the right foundations have been laid, if there's been at least one person in your life that's come alongside you, that's believed in you, man, oftentimes a kid just wants somebody to believe in them. Like, there's so many kids, and it's blown my mind, that I've worked with that literally told me, they was like, man, Mr. Darby, I've never heard my parents tell me they love me. Like, I've never heard anybody in my family tell me they believed in me. Like, and so, and these are like 15, 16-year-old kids. I'm not talking about like third and fourth graders. I'm talking about kids that are about to graduate high school that have never been told by anyone in their lives that they love them or they believe in them. And so I believe that, that by having at least one person behind them, at least one person in front of them to speak life into them, even if they fall by the wayside, they'll come back, and say, man, I remember Mr. Darby said he believed that I could accomplish whatever it was. I believe Willie when he told me this was possible. I believe Alex when he said, and so I believe that the moral responsibility doesn't just lie on the child, but it also lies on those of us that are working in these spaces to speak life into vessels that have never been had life spoken into them.
Man,
and I
how
think if we
often
can
does
do
that happen? How often does that happen where you'll have a kid
weekly,
tell you, wow.
weekly. Yeah. And so we multiply that by all the different schools I've been in, like, man, the numbers would be, in the hundreds, like, easily, just because, like, and you can see the hurt, in their faces. You can hear it as they're telling these stories, man. And one of the things that I learned just by being in this space, the most consistent thing in these kids' lives is inconsistency. Like, people that said they're gonna be there, people that said they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that. And so, obviously, like, there's only so much a child that's still trying to figure out, what life looks like can take, if everyone that's coming into their life that's telling them they're gonna be there easily falls by the wayside. They're not getting that support system and that structure at home. And the people that are supposed to be providing it to them keep lying to them, essentially. And so I believe, man, wholeheartedly, again, those of us that are in positions to directly influence and impact, these kids, to at least speak some type of life into them, that's a seed that can have an eternal investment that you may not even see it in your lifetime, but they can go on and do exactly what it is God placed them on this earth to do. So I believe that we have to be intentional when we're in these spaces to give these kids, what they're telling us they're not receiving, in hopes, because, like I said, there's some kids that, I stand in front of and I'm encouraging, I'm trying to speak life into them. And it just seems like, that message really isn't sinking in. And I'm gonna be real. Sometimes it gets discouraging because it's like, man, you see the potential in the kid. You see, like, man, if they could just grab hold of this, like, life could be so much different. And it just feels as though you're not getting through. But I think about the scripture that says one waters, one plants, one waters, but eventually God gets the increase. And so I just came to realize the disappointment goes away when I realized maybe I was just sent to be the one that plants. Maybe I was just supposed to be the one that planted that initial seed, and there was someone else that was going to come alongside and water. And so I believe, man, if we just trust principles, like, you don't even have to have a faith background to understand the principle of what you sow is what you reap. Like, you don't have to read the Bible to understand that. Like, that's just common sense, but I believe if we're doing more sowing, right, into these children, and the right people come around and water that seed, man, we can see this next generation thrive in ways that they probably didn't even think was possible.
Wow. I mean, you just said something, man. The most consistent thing in these kids' lives is inconsistency. Here, let me ask you this. What has been one of your 3 years with FCA? What's been one of the biggest transformations that you've seen throughout the course of you being with them?
So this was easy, man. Like, because I love to share this story. Every time I think about it, man, it still grips me to this day. One of the schools here in Cleveland that has a rich FCA history is Glenville High School, or Ginn Academy. Coach Ginn, who we recently just took down to Kansas City, which is where our global office is, and he got inducted into our FCA Hall of Champions. He's been doing FCA for at least 30 years in the Glenville community. And there's been so many lives that have been transformed, as a result of what God has done through, you know, Coach Ken and FCA. But I'll never forget, it was 2018. And this story, like I said, man, it's so emotional for me. Just because if you know anything about the Glenville community, you know the challenges that exist. You know what those kids are up against each and every day. And for a lot of them, sports, you know, is their ticket. Like sports is their way out, you know. And then I'm not slighting education, but what I'm saying is a lot of those guys understand, man, listen, I'm doing this so I can bring my whole family out. Like, I'm not trying to go get this bag for me. Like, you know, my mama need to get her water cut back on. You know, I want to pay my grandparents back for everything they did for me. It's like the challenges are real. And so 2018, every year we do these big FCA camps, and it's the last camp that the team actually does before they go into their regular season. And so I'll never forget, man, the night before camp is about to start, or the weekend before, I should say, there was a young man that was shot and killed. He was going to be a senior, a leader on the team. He's buried, you know, in this church where we're doing this camp, or they have his funeral. And so all his teammates are there, and they're coming in Monday, and you can just sense there's such a heaviness on the team. You know, they just buried, you know, one of their brothers. And so I just watched, you know, how over these 3 days, you know, God was moving on these guys' hearts. Every day we would leave with a chapel service. You know, there would be a word for the day. You know, and I believe the theme that year was "Let's Go," stemming from Matthew 28:19 through 20. You know, to the Great Commission: "Go ye therefore, make disciples." Right, like that was the charge for those 3 days. And so, you know, they're being encouraged, they're being fired up, they're going out on the field doing their drills, they're eating together. And on the third day, we had an idea, you know, let's just hold a baptism service. Let's do something we haven't done in FCA camp before. Now, to provide context, the Glenville team had about 65, 70 players that were at this camp. Some of them didn't have any type of faith in God. Some of them did. There were even a couple kids that, you know, identified as Muslims. When we broke the huddle for that last day, and we went into the church to do baptisms, in the same church where these guys were just were a week ago and buried a teammate, 25 of those young men got baptized as a result of what they felt God do in their hearts over those 3 days. I share that story just to say, man, when God's love is made tangible and real in the hearts of young people, they can't deny what they feel, and it moves them to do something they may not fully understand, but they know, I need to do this in order for my life to be changed forever. And so, man, it was just so powerful for me to see in the same church where they where they unfortunately had to, you know, honor the life of someone being lost. Like 25 of those guys, man, were able to celebrate the newness of life, or a rebirth, so to speak. Fox 8 came out, they did a big story, and one of the kids was a Muslim. And they asked him, they was like, man, you know, do you know why you got baptized? And he said, this is just something I felt I needed to do. I wanted Jesus to come into my life and make my life right. And so out of everything, and there's tons more stories I can share, but out of my 3 years, close to 3 years in FCA, that's been one of the most powerful transformations that I've witnessed firsthand of what happens when God's love is made real in the life of a young of a young man or young lady.
Man, that's an amazing story, man.
Wow.
And like me, like I played like muni football when I was young, and I try to tell people all the time, football, definitely football, but it just sports, but definitely football. It teaches you like something that it will stick with you forever, because football is a sport that you literally dependent on the other 10 people that are on the field with you. Like you have to work together. You're dependent on your brother. If one of you mess up, that affects everybody. Like,
yeah.
But what I wanted to like piggyback off of, you said something earlier, because on this show, we always promote, you know, education and not just being an athlete. But I want to just make a note that we do understand that sometimes sports is literally the only way. Like it's not something that I want to gloss over. So I do get like, where as a kid, it's like, yo, my job, I have to get to the league because I have to take care of my family. I have to get my mom and my sisters and my siblings out of this area. I've literally seen it. And then a lot of times too is a lot of young men, their first example of a father figure isn't until they step on the football field or on a basketball court, on the baseball diamond. They have no examples of a father at home. So by you being a coach, I want you to explain by being a coach, because coaches have to do a lot. Not only do they have to be a husband, some of them have to be fathers, but also they have to also be a father to those other kids too.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot that coaches go through that they may not even talk about. Talk about the stress and the anxiety and the mental health that coaches go through. Because coaches, man, like the coaches are everything, man. I don't think people really understand like how much of an impact coaches have in the community.
Man, I couldn't have articulated it any better, man. There's a quote we often refer to in FCA that Billy Graham, world-renowned Billy Graham, shared. And he shared this about coaches. He said, a coach in 1 year will impact more people than one person in their entire lifetime. Like, that's how impactful and influential a coach is.
So true.
And, exactly. You know it from, being a athlete in Muni football and, the coach that you had. And, in FCA, we also understand that the greatest influence, that these kids have in front of them, obviously, they have parents at home, but one of the greatest influences in their lives is a coach. And so we stress ministry has to be done, discipleship has to be done, leadership has to be modeled to and through the coach. And so a lot of what I do is I'm ministering and discipling coaches, because when you're the one that's steadily pouring out, like you shared, Willie, a coach is doing so much. A coach is an Uber driver for his players. A coach is the grocery store for some of his players. A coach is a counselor, a father, an uncle. A coach wears so many different hats, all while still having his own responsibilities at home. And so when you're the one that's constantly pouring out, who's pouring back into you? And I've been a coach. I coached high school football for 2 years. And you quickly learn by being a coach, it's not about the X's and O's. Like, yes, you're going to have guys that go on the field that you're going to have to coach up. But at the end of the day, I spent more of my time talking to a kid about why his grades was falling in school. Why he was coming to practice with his head down every day. It's because he fell out with his girlfriend the night before. Like, he don't understand what he's feeling. Another player just found out his girlfriend is pregnant, 17 years old in high school with his first child on the way. Like, you understand quickly, it's not about the X's and O's. Like, it's about speaking and ministering to what these kids are dealing with. And so being a coach myself and also being in a place where I'm discipling and mentoring coaches, like, let me say this plea, because I know you guys have an audience that tunes into the show. Pray for coaches. Like, check on your friends that are coaches. We talk about mental health, right? And that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, just because, I have friends and family members. I have friends, my bad, fellas. I have friends and family members that have battled, and are currently battling with mental health. And coaches are no different, because if a coach isn't careful, what he's dealing with in that locker room or on that field, if he's not careful, he can easily bring those things home. I won't say who it is, because he has a reputation, all himself, well-respected coach. He shared with me, and he's actually involved with FCA. He shared with me, as a result of depression, he had 3 kids and a wife. As a result of depression, he tried to drive himself off of a cliff 4 years ago. Like, as a result of all the pressures that mounted from being a coach, and also, just PTSD from being in the military, all those that's a whole nother conversation. But the pressures that were mounting as a coach drove him to want to take his own life. And so if you have friends that are coaches, if you're a coach, I would encourage every coach to seek out counseling, seek out a therapist, seek out some type of healthy medium that you can have an outlet to, because you need it. You need it, because when the X's and O's are taken away, when you're not in front of that whiteboard, with your coaching staff going through practice plans for the week, you're left by yourself. You're left by yourself. And when you're left by yourself, if you don't have, one, the power of God operating in and through your life, like, who knows what it can lead you to? Alcohol, it could lead you to drugs, it could lead you to sleeping with a number of women, whatever the case may be. But seeing it from both sides and being one that ministers to coaches, let's make sure we're praying and checking on our coaches, because they're taking on a lot more than just comes with being a coach. You're not teaching the game, you're teaching life. And in teaching life, there's going to be situations that come to your doorstep that you may not be equipped to handle, but that kid, that young athlete is looking at you and they need you to have the answer.
Man, we just had this conversation last week where we were talking about, because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I would say over the past 3-4 years, it's kind of become accepted to be a professional athlete and talk about your mental health, but it's not acceptable or popular for you to be a coach, for you to be a teacher, for you to be a counselor. One of the things that we talked about was the pressure of being a coach, not just having the responsibility to coach your team to winning games and getting into playoffs and whatnot, but also having the responsibility for young men and young women. I know guys who are coaches of women's teams, right? Female teams. And that's a different type of pressure, right? But the fact of the matter is that you have the pressure of being a coach and all these, we interviewed an artist probably about 6 weeks to 8 weeks ago, and she was telling us about how it's something we never thought about. When you step on stage in front of thousands of people, all the energy, all their emotions, all their fears, all of that is being projected onto you at the exact same time. They don't even know that you're doing it. Athletes, same thing. As a coach, you have to get this group of ego mania, all these individuals to work together. If you're playing football, of course, this dude wants to get the ball so he can score. This dude wants to have a certain number of sacks for this game. This dude wants to just get PT, right? You got to get all these dudes to come together, but all the things that they brought with them to practice, to game day, all of those things get projected onto you as a coach. And even if it's being projected onto the assistant coaches and the trainers or whatnot, it's still coming back to you because all the responsibility falls back on you. And so, how do we, or you haven't been in that place from coaches to teachers and whatnot, is there a safe space for them to be able to talk about the things that they go through from having to carry the responsibility that they have?
Yeah, absolutely. I know for a fact that there are groups out there that some of the names are escaping me, but I know so the former football coach at Warrensville, I know he had mentioned that there were a group of coaches, throughout the Lake Erie League that kind of came together and they formed like this coaching alliance, and so it's really a brotherhood amongst coaching because,
That's
let's be
awesome,
real.
man. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's be real. Like, okay, you do what you do on the field. There's the rivalry, that may exist between one program and another. But at the end of the day, we're all brothers, right? Or at least we should have that mindset. And so I was so encouraged to hear that there was this coalition, of coaches that had come together, to really help understand, like, we need a space for us to rally together as men, as young men, as boys on our teams, just to, not be able to talk anything football. Let's just talk about life. I know also that the Browns and the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton created this program called Be the Bridge, and it stems from, the racial reconciliation issues that we have. And it was bringing multiple high schools all over Northeast Ohio together from various communities. Like, let's talk about social justice issues. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about the things that ail our various communities. And let's be that bridge, to help all of us get to the other side, so to speak. I know specifically us within FCA, we have this initiative we're in the process of launching called One Team. And One Team really speaks to, it doesn't matter whether you're in Avon, Glenville, Warrensville, Mayfield Heights. At the end of the day, because we were all created in God's image, we are one people, i.e. one team. And so, we're looking to bring teams together from different communities to just have healthy conversations of how, even though we're from different backgrounds, how can we support one another? How can I learn from, the experience that you have growing up and you learn from mine? Coming alongside each other to complete community service projects, to be able to work side by side and understand teamwork and leadership in a greater sense. So there are programs that are out there, for these coaches and these athletes to be a part of, because I believe, experiences help shape our perspectives. And so if they're healthy experiences and we're being able to hear perspectives from others that we may not have even think like us or can relate to what we're going through, it can help unify us in ways that we couldn't even begin to imagine. So those are just a couple programs that I know of for sure to mention. But again, I can't stress it enough, for coaches and, to seek out, those services that are there, whether it's therapy, whether it's, going to counseling, just being able to do what's necessary for your mental health and for your sanity, so that you can be the best version of you for your family and for those under your sphere of influence as well.
All right, man. So we got into senior. So for me, junior, Ted Ginn Jr., it's like, that's like the guy, like I remember watching 2007 Ohio State, Michigan, the game. I remember watching that. Like,
yes, sir.
I remember watching him get drafted to the Dolphins. He was like the guy that you look at like, hey, he's from my city and he made it and he's still going strong.
Yes,
First
sir.
off, God blessed him with a gift that you just can't teach, which is called speed. So
absolutely,
his career
is fast.
Man, listen, right? But even Troy Smith. But I'm just saying Ted just because I think he's still currently in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But explain, what does a guy like that, the impact that he has on the kids, not just at Ginn Academy in Glenville, but throughout the Cleveland community? Because if you want to look for an example and look like, hey, his hard work paid off, like he's still going strong. You cannot say nothing bad about him off the field either. You can't find nothing that he did bad. He went to Old State, did his thing, got to the league, kept his name clean. Man, explain how big it is to have an example like that for us.
Absolutely. I think what's so powerful about, that story with Ted, is like, hey, if you see someone from your city, from your community, somebody that you may have, played side by side with, actually make it, you feel like you made it,
It hit different, man.
It hit different when, it's from your hometown, your zip code, they walk through the same high schools that you walk through. There's a sense of pride that people from Akron have just by saying, they went to school with LeBron, or, they're from Akron, Ohio. It just, it just elicits a sense of pride when you see one of your own make it. And like you said, for him to go and not just make it, but to have a playing career. I remember watching him 2012 in the Super Bowl against the Ravens, when he was with the 49ers, and Beyonce freaking caused the lights to go out at halftime. But
y'all still blaming it on her?
So-called the lights went out at the Super Bowl.
Right, exactly. But just being able to see him reach, the pinnacle of all. I mean, it could be argued that the Super Bowl is the greatest game in all of sports, next to Game 7. Super Bowl, Game 7, they're both up there. But to see your own, make it, even the Dante Whitners of the world make it, and play at the highest level, it just gives you a sense of pride. Like to see, if your guys or those you're connected to make it, even if you don't make it to the field, okay, maybe that gives you aspirations. Okay, like we were talking about earlier, maybe I can make it to the front office. Maybe I can become a GM one day. By them getting to where they got to. And I love the story of LeBron. Like I remember ESPN did a story to really kind of highlight, how he put his team on, paying for Rich Paul, to go to law school so that he could become his agent. Like, and so I think that's even the greater story, not just seeing your guys make it so that you have hope that you can make it and do what they're doing, but seeing them make it to say, man, how can I come alongside and help, be an extension of what they are. They're going to need somebody that handles their marketing and promotions. They're going to need somebody that helps them understand and set up business deals and things of that nature. They're the athlete. They have the platform. But how can you come alongside them, with the right motives and the right heart to help advance what they're doing? And that's what I love, not even just about what Ted did, but, LeBron and, you look at other guys that have helped set their guys in position to go and make names for themselves as well. But I think it just gives a sense of pride, a sense of hope, and really just a sense of encouragement to really just think higher than where you are. So,
first off, man, my bad, Dante, man. I forgot all about you, Tay. My bad, man. Pro Bowler too, man. That's
Yes,
thank you
sir.
for bringing him up, man. So, but
absolutely.
you mentioned earlier about the shortened careers that it is to the NFL. But the example I like to give people, I don't know if you guys know who Emmanuel Acho is. He's on Fox now. He had a short NFL career, but he look at what he's doing now. And I don't know if you noticed, Fox is trying to do to him what they did to Stephen A. Smith. Like he's becoming the face, and he's good. But to me, that's the example I kind of try to use when I talk to younger people. Like, here's a guy, like, it's not guaranteed. He went to a big college, went to Texas. I think he even got drafted by the Browns or whatever. But it's like his career didn't work out. But look at where he's at now. He makes a lot more money than probably a lot of people on NFL rosters. And a lot of kids don't understand that. Everybody that's on the NFL roster is not making big money.
Exactly.
Like, trust me, man. And the contracts are not guaranteed. And I think that's another reason why you have to, like you said, man, you can go be a Stuart Scott, a Stephen A. Smith. Like you can go be those guys. Everybody ain't blessed to shoot like Steph Curry or to be like LeBron James. But you can be like, and they're giving these jobs away to athletes. It's like they really want these athletes to have them. So to be able to have that background to just have, all right, man, if this don't work out, like we talk about what's your plan in case it don't work out. And a lot of people like, I don't need no plan because it's gonna work out. No, you really do need another plan in case it don't work out, man. That's very important. So like when you hear a kid say that, man, how do you get through to a kid that's just determined, like, no, I'm going to the league? How do you get through to him to make sure that you still got to make sure you have something else just in case you always one injury away?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Acho, I don't know if you've seen, man, but he also just got that bag from Hyundai.
Yeah, I seen that. Yeah, Acho doing it, man.
Yeah, he doing it, and I love that example of him, man, because he's another example of a guy that understood his platform, and that's something, man. So I have a lot of friends that have played, at the pro level or are still currently, involved, in pro sports. And one of the greatest things that they said is that a lot of guys, at the height of their career, like that's the peak, like, and they'll never be greater than that because they fail to learn how to leverage their platform. Like that's the one thing that one of my guys said, when he retired from the league, he understood, if I don't leverage my platform, if I don't use these relationships and these contacts that I gained over the years, like, I'll just become forgotten about, and so there's a key to leveraging your platform. And so I would say to, a lot of these high school athletes or collegiate athletes, what's the platform that you have? One of the examples that I love, man, I can't remember his name, but it was a kid, I believe he was the quarterback for Northwestern. I want to say it was a black and purple school, the colors. It might have been TCU, it might have been Northwestern, but this kid, he was lobbying for college athletes to be paid. And so, he went out and, he petitioned and he was on, these different platforms and, he leveraged his platform as a quarterback, a college quarterback at a Division I school to say, hey, these college athletes need to be paid. And now I think he's doing something in the political world. And so I would encourage, every young athlete, that may watch this, okay, yes, you may have a gift in athletics, but what's the platform that when you do it, people just gravitate towards it? Maybe you're a great speaker. Maybe you're a great debater. Maybe you're a great organizer. Maybe you're a great planner, whatever the case may be. What is that one thing that every time you do it, people tend to take notice? And so I would say, if you find out what that is, let that be what drives you like your passion and your athletics should run side by side. Like, while you're getting good at this, make sure you're also getting good at this, because when this stops, when the athletic train is past you, you still want to have what you're passionate about, still paying the bills, still creating opportunities, still creating other platforms for you. If you're great at social media, learn how to leverage that social media platform to market your other friends that are athletes, whatever the case may be. And so I would just encourage them to not take lightly what they're good at or what other people tell them they see that they have a passion for, because 10 times out of 10, if they apply themselves to that, it can make them either more money or open up other platforms than what athletics could ever do for them as well.
Man, and that's a great point. I would venture to say, even if you had a long career in the league, you still need to have something to do, because I want to just give a shout out to I Am Athlete. Those dudes do a great job. But they said on that show, what other career do you have when you got to pick another lane at 30 years old? right?
Right.
Because to us, 30 is young, but to them, that's old when you came into the league at 20, 21 years old, or maybe
Right.
even a little bit younger. But it's like you need something, and it's not so much the money, it's those dudes suffer from depression. Those dudes suffer from not being able to get back out on that field.
Yeah.
You know, 9 times out of 10, by the time they married with kids and they don't have any other skill set, they don't have anything else that they were working towards by the time that they left. And they even said, they tell you when you're about to leave, you're probably going to have
Yeah.
a breakdown at some point. You're probably going
Yeah.
to need to talk to someone. And
Mhm.
B Marshall, who actually struggles with that, he said he was up in his hotel for 2 weeks, did not
Yeah.
leave. And he said the only
Mhm.
reason he left is because he had to go pick up his wife. And that was the
Yeah.
only reason he left. But he said he had a hell of a breakdown. But I
Yeah.
want to talk about something that you just said, having a platform. And we see
Mhm.
nowadays with Facebook, Twitter, IG, you could be a star college athlete and you could have 1 million followers, right?
Right.
College rules, Title IX, 2023, I think it's going into effect in California, but for other states, you can't leverage your platform.
Yeah.
You saw NFL draft the next day, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, these dudes got endorsements, they got commercials, and trust me, those companies been wanting to endorse them. My
Right.
question to you: should college athletes be paid, and should they be allowed to capitalize off of their likeness right now?
Man, I can answer this answer emphatically. Yes. Absolutely, man. The NCAA, man, is $1 billion entity. I mean,
Multi-billion dollar. Yeah.
absolutely. You know, we can just use one scenario, March Madness. Like, March Madness brings in countless dollars, from sponsorships to TV time to people that just want to be connected to the
Those ticket
brand.
prices, bro. Have you ever been those games? Just to sit up in the rafters can cost you $1,500 a ticket. A
Easy
ticket.
to be in the bleeds. You like you sitting up there where the banners is. Like you up there with binoculars for $1,500.
And
Like
and just think about college football games. Just take Ohio State. Those tickets
yeah,
cost more than Browns tickets, bro. Those suites
facts.
cost
Yeah,
double, 2 to 3 times more than a Brown
yeah,
suite. That is
yeah,
insane. And that's outside of the beer and
yeah.
the chips and the hot dogs and all that
Ex-
kind of stuff. They bringing in
Right,
all this
right.
money.
Exactly. And so, in knowing that, I look at it like this, and you just used a great example, like the Justin Fields, the Trevor Lawrences, the Trey Lances of the world. They knew, man, as soon as I get drafted, like it's just going to be a windfall of opportunities. This company's going to want to pick me up. That company's going to want to pick me up. And so I feel in a lot of ways it's selfish. Like the NCAA knows that. They know who the guys are going to be, which is why they schedule the certain games that they schedule, which is why they paint the narrative about the Heisman finalists and all. Like they do just like the NFL and the NBA. They decide what school, what program, what athlete they're going to get behind, and they're going to push that narrative. Prime example: Zion Williamson when he was at Duke. All you heard that whole season, Zion this, Zion that. When he blew out his sneaker, oh man, is Zion gonna go with Nike? Is he gonna go with Adidas? Whatever the case may be, they know what they're doing, and they're profiting off the names of these kids. And so, any type of athlete, especially a college athlete, you don't have time to work. Like, like I was in college, like,
Bro,
after
say that
like,
again for the people in the back because they don't understand. Oh,
yeah,
they're getting a free education. When do you have time to study? When do you have time to go to class, dude? That's an all year
exactly.
round program. Trust and
Hey
believe,
man,
and trust and believe. If they don't play, they lose that scholarship.
oh, absolutely. Like, bro, listen, man. College athletes, like, we're taking courses like, man, intro to communication 101. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because what's the demands, like, they try to say student athlete, you're an athlete student. Because if you're not going out there to perform, you're not making that
Thank you.
school money, you're
Thank you.
not bringing that school the notoriety that they're accustomed to having. And so we can try to push student athlete, free education this, free education that, when that kid knows, man, listen, if I'm going to just come here and do my thing for 1 to 2 years, because I know in 2 years time, I'm going to be signing a $20 million contract. And so, you know, like I can't stand the argument that the NCAA has. Well, you know, while they're here, you know, they're paying to get an education. No, really what they're doing is padding your pockets.
Like,
while y'all
shut
just
up with all that, man.
Right.
Like,
It's like, come on, man.
Like, come on, man.
You just mad because they're affecting your bottom line. Because, you know, if you allow that to happen for one athlete, like prime example, y'all remember 2005, probably arguably the most watched college football game, college championship game of all time, USC versus Texas. Like on both sides of that field, you have first round NFL draft picks, like first round NFL talent on both sides of the field. Like, could you imagine how much money the NCAA would have had to cash out if the Vince Youngs, the Reggie Bushes, the Lindell Whites, the Michael Jarrett's of the world, like, would have been able to cash in on at that time? And so the NCAA knows, man, like, especially with this social media wasn't even a thing back then. I think Facebook was just getting started. So, man, if you now have, so now
it's still MySpace back then.
Facts, Black Planet, Tag, AOL, like,
you know, Black Planet, that's completely different, but yeah.
Exactly, man. But if you allow that faucet to be cut on now, like, the NCAA knows, like, you know, what's their risk. But the thing about it, man, like, there's enough out here for all of us. I just think, you know, because this is such a capitalist driven society, like, you know, Wu-Tang said it best, man. Cash rules everything around me. And that's how I know the NCAA operates. It's like, man, money talks, you know, and we know the rest. But I definitely think, man, college athletes, just having been in that position and knowing what they face, like, you know, they should be compensated. At least if they can't capitalize on their likeness, let's at least give them a stipend, you know, something. But I do believe they should be able, you know, to cash in. You know, why not? You worked hard to get to where you are.
Like, and the coaches getting paid more than professional coaches. Like, that's the part that pisses me off. All you got to do is take 5% of his salary and you can pay the whole team.
Facts. Absolutely. And then, you know, I also heard an argument, well, you know, if we do it for, you know, the star players on the team, then we marginalize, you know, the guys that are on the bench. And what does that matter? Like, so because I'm more talented, you know, because I may have an opportunity to go to the league, I have to be penalized because, you know, our senior lineman, that this will be his only time playing football, is not going to get an endorsement. Bro, the playing field is not the same even in the pro ranks. There's only a handful of guys that are getting endorsements at the pro level, you know, and so I think that argument is just a bunch of crap. And, you know, college athletes should be able to cash in, you know, because they worked hard to get to where they are. You know, two, I think them being able to cash in will help them understand business, you know, help them understand how to brand themselves, you know. So I look at more so the pros than I do the cons. You know, I think they just, yeah, man. So I think, you know, it helps them to understand the power they have as an athlete, you know, but for whatever reason, greed, you know, I think that's one of the main reasons that NCAA doesn't want to allow it. But, you know, I think it's bogus.
This how screwed up that system is. I just found this out the other day. A lot of people don't know this, right? For a college athlete, if they want to transfer, some of them have to sit out a year, right? If a coach wants to go somewhere, he signs a contract. If he wants to leave and go somewhere tomorrow, he can. But guess what? If a player wants to, let's say if you go to Ohio State, you say, I want to transfer and go to Michigan. You know that coach, just because it's in conference, can deny your transfer just because, no, you're not going there. So not only do they have that type of power to say, nah, bro. Or what if, you know, you at Ohio State, Michigan is close. All right, I want to go to Michigan State. No, you can't go there. That's in conference. You got to go all the way to Alabama or something. And then I don't know if these coaches don't realize this, or NCAA. Ain't nobody turning on to see the coaches. We turned on to see Justin Fields. We turned on to see Trevor Lawrence. We ain't turning on to see y'all, man. And then the playoffs. It's not a coincidence that it's the same four teams almost every year in the college football playoffs. Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. It's no mistake that somehow, some way, you might get Oklahoma in there every now and then.
Yeah.
But they don't
Georgia.
mistake that the
Yeah.
top teams with the top
Baylor.
athletes, they gonna find a way to make sure
Yeah.
that they on there, man, because they moved the needle, man.
Facts.
Look at the game a couple years ago. You want to talk about talent? The Clemson Ohio State game where you had Chase Young, Justin Fields,
Yeah.
Dobbins.
Yeah.
Then you had
Yeah.
T. Higgins, Lawrence. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that game
Right.
was just as big as the national championship game, if not even bigger than the national championship game. Because listen, man, but when I heard that a coach could deny a transfer if it was in conference, I couldn't believe that. I didn't even know they could do that.
That's crazy that you said a coach can do it and it's not the AD.
No, the coach can say, no, you can't transfer her. You just conference.
Crazy.
No.
That's insane.
Yeah. It is, man. Like, because then, you know, the kid is penalized simply because he's trying to go after a better opportunity. You know, you can look at the Jalen Hurts situation. You know, he had to go from the SEC to the Big 12. You know, I guarantee he wouldn't have been able to play at at Kentucky or at Florida, you know, or Auburn. You know, absolutely not. But you know, I think we have a long ways to go, you know, in NCAA as far as, you know, leveling the playing field for college athletes, even with what you share, Willie, about, you know, the transfers, because, man, we live in a day and age, it started in high school. Like, man, I remember growing up, like, wherever you grew up in that community, like, you played at that high school. Like, you had a sense of pride, man. I'm about to be a Tiger. I'm about to be a Mustang. I'm about to be a Bearcat, whatever the case may be. But now, man, the high school transfer portal is wide open because I want to go play with my friends. And so, you know, it's starting earlier and earlier. So the NCAA, man, is in for a rude awakening because the behaviors that are being demonstrated now by the 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are coming into college, like they're going to have a beast within the next 2 to 3 years. Just because of what.
Go ahead.
I was saying they're going to have a beast 2 to 3 years from now, man, just because of what's being displayed at the amateur ranks.
And not to mention, too, like the shift is coming. Like you got some of the top recruits now going to HBCU colleges, which I love it, by the way. So,
yeah.
And I always say this, man, like that NCAA class that had Zion, RJ Barrett, and Cam Reddish. Could you imagine if one of them had said, nah, you know what, let's go to a HBCU? Like you can't tell me, like the NCAA would have felt that.
Yeah,
they would have felt that, like, and that's what I can't wait to. Oh my, what? Yes, they'd have felt that, and that's what I really want to start happening now, like, because you've seen a lot of kids, and I love it, man. Like a kid like Bronny don't need nothing from the NCAA. If he want to go to a HBCU, he can go. He cool,
right?
And you know, every college, I guarantee you, Coach K has already called LeBron. They already done had a conversation or something.
Hey man, Coach K offered Bronny as soon as he was born. He was in the hospital with a recruitment letter.
And I just hope, like, and I know, like, LeBron's probably be preaching to him because I love to see that, because I feel like, why can't a college athlete go there? And if he's over there, you can't tell me the boosters and the resource ain't about to go there now. The talent over there, they gonna go there. It's gonna follow.
No, trust and believe. P's son committed, Shaq's son committed. If Bronny does it, it'll change the entire landscape for high. You know what I'm saying? Because you know he's and what's funny, they had P and his sons on the Breakfast Club, and he said they played Sierra Canyon. He was like, "Man, we didn't beat them by 20 before, right?" So,
right.
But from a notoriety standpoint, most people don't know that Bronny is here. So, and I love what his dad is doing with that. He's basically controlling the narrative, controlling that whole story. If he commits, that changes everything. And all these quote unquote rules and laws that are in place, they're going to have to change it.
Facts. I mean, look at what LeBron did. Like, LeBron was probably, if I'm not mistaken, I think LeBron was one of the last, like, big time, you know, high school players to go straight from high school to the league. Because shortly after he got drafted, like, they changed that rule where you had to play at least 1 year in college. But like you guys said, man, like, you know, if any kid could come and do that, it would definitely be Bronny. And I love what, you know, talking about HBCUs, I love the trend that Deion Sanders, you know, just started. You know, a high profile athlete, you know, a high profile personality. You know, I'm sure he could have got any job he wanted. He could have went to a big time school. he could have had his choice of recruiting and so on and so forth. But he said, no, I'm gonna take power to my own hands. I'm gonna change the narrative, and I'm gonna go, to a Jackson State, and we're gonna turn this program around. So I definitely, agree with you guys that a shift and a change is coming, and hopefully it's this next generation, that starts it.
So when we talk about sports, man, usually in our community is football, basketball, and then probably boxing or something like that, right? But
Right.
there's so many other sports that we've seen where we can dominate. And so what other sports should we begin to encourage our kids to play? Because just football, basketball, although those are big pastimes for us, there's other opportunities where the competition for us is low when we can get in. What would you say about that?
Soccer, golf, lacrosse, tennis, like those sports, like I would highly encourage a lot of our, African American kids, in the urban communities, even baseball. I was talking with a guy and, he was just letting me know like the trends for baseball right now, like youth baseball, especially in our urban communities, is on a swift decline. Simply because one, a lot of urban kids aren't attracted to baseball. There aren't enough, black guys that are playing baseball that, have high profiles. They're like, there's a couple guys you can point to, but I mean, y'all know in our days, man, we had Kenny Lofton, we had Ken Griffey Jr., like, Albert Bell, like, yep. We had guys we could look at like, man, like, that looks dope. I want to go do that. Mike went and played baseball, and so I think those are sports that we have to encourage, or at least, present to them and say, hey, man, there's just as much opportunities in this for you as even more so than basketball and football. Like, man, I don't know the numbers, and so I'm not going to sit on here and try to make them up and, act like I know. But, man, I could only imagine how many scholarship dollars exist for, minority athletes in sports that they don't necessarily go for. So, hey, man, like one of our FCA schools, St. Ed's High School out in Lakewood, man, phenomenal lacrosse program. One of the best in the state, state of Ohio, and I love it because there's diverse athletes on that team. So we got to encourage our kids, man, to explore even wrestling. There's opportunities in wrestling as well. So, but
I'm
definitely
friends with the coach at Ed's, the wrestling coach. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, man, but I would say explore those, man, because the exposure, again, coming back to, but then even the scholarship dollars that exist for minorities, minority athletes in those spaces, simply because, they're not even being attracted to those sports. There's a lot more scholarships to go around than what there can be for a football or basketball aspect or avenue rather.
Bro, so a friend of mine, his son was a wideout at Ignatius. Dude was a stud. He wanted to go to Ohio State. He got a lacrosse scholarship. you know what I'm saying? So, because how competitive it is. It's like for you to go to Ohio State on a football scholarship, no matter how good, like that's the top 1% in the entire country, and you're just local, in that sense. But don't get me wrong, dude was good, but he got a lacrosse scholarship. I wanted to throw this at you. We talk about a lot of the issues that plague our communities, and in your line of work, you're front and center with a lot of it, even though the work you're doing, you're trying to change, reverse, and help kids get out of that. Well, what would you say are probably the top issues that are like immediate, where if we're going to see any type of growth and change in the community as a whole, where we just not dependent on sports to be able to make it out, that we should focus our attention on? Like what part is bleeding the most right now?
I would say access to financial literacy, man. That's a big one, because even if a kid makes it out of their situation, but they don't understand money, they can easily find themselves back in that situation. Prime example, since we are talking about sports, I remember Trent Richardson, great college back at Alabama. He did a little stint here in Cleveland. And I remember ESPN did an E60 story on him, and he shared, when he got drafted, the house that he bought where he was back home, somewhere in the South, he let his peoples, live there while he was up here in Cleveland. He left his debit cards and, his accounts and all that stuff with his family. And by the time he got out the league, man, his family left him bone dry, with nothing, and so, I just think that's an extreme story, but how many of our, young men and young ladies in African-American communities don't understand, how to balance a checkbook, don't understand, how to establish a savings account or how to even save money. And so I believe, man, outside of athletics, we need to really invest in financial literacy, for our young people so they can understand how to make their money work for them. If they can get those tools now at 12, 13, 14 years of age, what their savings account look like by the time they hit 30, right? What type of investments, can they put their money towards even now? A lot of kids are, working jobs. Do they understand, okay, you can put your money into some stocks. You can put your money, into, everybody's talking cryptocurrency is the wave right now. And if that's your thing and you're educated on it, cool, but I just believe that financial literacy is one of the biggest things ailing our communities, man, especially as it pertains to our young people. And if we could put more resources, in front of them to help them understand how their money could work for them, we set them up for long-term success for sure. Generational wealth.
Man, so first off, man, thank you so much for taking the time out, man, to come and sit down and talk with us. We talked about so much. I feel like that was a message right there.
Yeah, it was, man. This was awesome.
But I'm gonna ask you again, man. We about to get ready to close out, but what message would you leave for the young people?
Yeah, man, so much I could say. We definitely covered a wide range of topics, but if there was one thing I could land on is really spend some time praying, doing some soul searching, asking some questions about what is your purpose? What is the reason that you're here? There's a scripture that I often refer to, with a lot of the young students that I work with, that scripture being Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope, a future, plans to bring you to an expected end. God has an expected end. He has a specific place that he wants to bring you to. And I would encourage, every young person, and older people too, that are still looking and searching, just ask God to show you where's that place you're trying to bring me to. Because the one thing that I found out, when you're in purpose unlocks doors to everything else. You'll think that because doors are opening, you're in purpose. And a lot of times it's the exact opposite. So you'll be driven to do things and make moves that don't align with specifically what God wants to do in your life. But if you find that one door, you find that one opportunity, you find exactly where he wants you, and you're in his will, it opens up the right doors for you to be a part of. So I would just encourage everyone listening, spend some time finding out what is your God-given purpose, because that unlocks the world of possibilities and opportunities that he has for you.
Incredible. Nobles Darby, ladies and gentlemen. And so, hey, Nobles, tell the people how they can reach you, where they can find you, all your social handles, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so you guys can tap in with me on IG. It's just my name, at Nobles Darby IV. That's NOBLESDARBY, Roman numeral 4. You can also tap in with our FCA page at Cleveland FCA. Follow me on those social platforms. Love to connect with people, learn more about them, and just share the things that we're doing on this end as well.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you like, subscribe, and you can follow the Black Culture Podcast on Facebook, IG, Twitter, at the Black Culture Podcast. This episode is also on Apple, Google, and Spotify at the Black Culture Podcast. And Willie, you got anything, brother?
No, sir.
All right. Well, it's been another amazing, fantastic, awesome, and incredible episode. It's the Black Culture Podcast. Peace.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Black Culture Podcast. If you haven't already,
be sure to smash that like button and also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple, Google, and Spotify. And
Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Black Culture Podcast. Peace.